Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen really wants OP's house. Am I the jerk for buying my sister's dream house? My wife and I recently closed on our dream house, and it has the family torn. Years ago, my grandparents owned the family home, but when they passed unexpectedly with a lot of medical debt and expenses, our family had to sell their house. It was heartbreaking and sad, and I decided as a small kid that one day I would buy the house back. I shared those dreams with my sister. I met my wife when I was 18 and she was 21. Her parents owned a small rental that they allowed her to live in rent-free, just paying for the expenses. She invited me to live with her a year into our relationship, and we got married a year after that. I told her about my dreams of owning my grandparents' house, and she fully supported me. We began putting large amounts of money back for a down payment in the hopes that the house wouldn't go on the market before we could afford it. Because we didn't pay rent and we both had very good jobs for our ages and the economy we lived in, we were able to put back a very large sum of money. My in-laws also offered us a sum of $75,000 for the down payment, and in total, we put back about $185,000. About 20 years after my grandparents passed away, their house finally went back on the market at a massive price. The house itself is huge with 6 bedrooms, a large lakefront estate, and several features, including a pool and a small guest house. We knew that this house would have a huge price tag, and we scamped and budgeted for 9 years to afford my dream house. My sister was also house shopping at this time, but with a much smaller budget. Her and her husband have kids, student debt, and rented for the past several years, and were not able to save money the same way that my wife and I were. When our grandparents' house went on the market, I sent the link to my sister and said that we were finally getting our grandparents' home back in the family. She was very excited and said as much, and that was that. My wife and I moved forward, visiting with the owners and real estate agents, having it inspected and made an offer. They accepted, and we were absolutely over the moon. Throughout this whole process, my sister kept saying how excited she was to have the house back in the family, and how nice it will be for her kids to know this house and grow up in it like her and I did. Our grandparents' house was the location of every birthday, holiday, gathering, and reunion, and my wife and I planned on making it that way again, which was why what my sister said didn't raise any red flags. Weird that she had phrased it that way, but not concerning. We had a barbecue at my parents' house to celebrate the final closing of our house. During the dinner, my mother-in-law offered to kennel our dogs while we were in the stages of moving to keep things easier and them safe, and that was when my sister piped up. She asked why our dogs needed to be watched when the real issue was her kids. My wife asked what she meant, and she said that her kids will need more supervision than our dogs, and that she was confused as to why we'd be so busy that our dogs needed watching. I told her I was the one confused. I didn't know she was helping us move, and that if her kids couldn't reliably be left to their own devices, then she absolutely did not need to help us pack. My sister proceeded to ask why my wife and I would be packing. I told her the obvious: we just closed on a house. For length reasons, I'll leave out a lot of the back and forth, but here's the gist of it. My sister had it in her head that we were buying the house to either A, rent to own it out to her family, or B, transfer the title to her name and have her pay us back in time. Yes, that is literally what she was thinking, despite us never discussing anything like that even once. When I told her that was not happening, my sister threw a fit. She was upset because this was her dream home too, and that it wasn't fair that only one of us could live in it. That since she had kids, they deserved to grow up in the family home, and what did my wife and I even need all that space for? My wife and I told her that it isn't the family home anymore. It wasn't left in a will. We purchased it, and now it's our home, and we decide what we will do with it. My sister told my wife to shut up and that she had no say in this family discussion. I informed my sister that if she spoke to my wife that way again, we would not be having any kind of contact with her anymore. That she doesn't get to assume we're giving her a house and then throw a fit when she's put in her place. Then we left. My in-laws spoke to us on the matter a few times, but they all told us that we were in the right and that my sister was very out of line. I assumed everyone would agree, but if they did, I wouldn't be here. I got texts and voicemails from my parents saying that we were out of line for threatening my sister. They told me that they were disappointed in me for taking my sister's dream home away from her and that I don't have kids, so I can't understand her want to provide them with a good home and childhood like she had. That it's only fair we set up a way to give her the house and that we could afford to find something else. Even my more distant relatives have said that it was cruel of us to take that from her. I'm honestly super shocked and taken aback. I've seen stories similar to this on Reddit, entitled people thinking they should get their relatives' houses, but I never expected to live it. This feels surreal, and I hate that we're starting this new chapter out on such a sour note. Am I the jerk for buying my sister's dream house? Not the jerk. Your sister is delusional and has made up a narrative in her head that she is owed or entitled to certain privileges. Your parents are crazy for reinforcing that narrative to her. Good on you for taking your wife's side and not standing for the disrespect. Not the jerk. Put cameras up ASAP. It doesn't sound like the crazy is going to fade away, so be prepared. You haven't done anything wrong. Congratulations on your new home. I hope you and your wife are very happy there. We reverse gazumped a greedy landlord and it was glorious. Gazumping is when an agent or a seller accepts an offer you make to buy a property at an agreed upon price, but the property is then sold to someone else. This usually happens when the vendor sells the property for a higher amount. This happened 15 years ago, and it's one of the proudest moments of my life. My best friend and her husband have 5 kids together. They lived in an expensive city and rented an old 4-bedroom house for $400 per week. The house was very run down with a disgusting kitchen and sink, but it was all they could afford at the time. Still, they made it work. The owner was a nice old lady who was extremely wealthy and very fond of my friend. She froze the rent for 5 years and promised to let them buy the house once they had saved enough to get a loan from the bank. As she had helped other people in a similar way, they knew they could trust her, so they saved every cent they could. It took them 5 years, but they finally told her they were ready. 2 days later, the nice old lady passed away before anything was put in writing. Enter the new owners, the lady's 4 kids, each extremely wealthy in their own right. They inherited a huge portfolio of properties. When they first spoke to my friends, they assured them that the sale would still go through, but they would have to wait until probate had settled. Confident, my friends started making some changes to the place. They started by stripping wallpaper, painting, and making plans. Finally, probate was settled, and the owners agreed to go ahead with the sale for the previously agreed price. My friends applied for the loan, but to their shock, it was refused. The owners had raised the asking price by $80,000 without telling my friends. To make things even worse, the house would be put on the open market. In 7 days, there would be an open house, and with the market the way it was, it would probably sell immediately. My friends were devastated. They might be able to borrow enough, but it would take longer than a week to get. To make matters worse, property prices had soared recently, and rents had gone up a lot whilst theirs had been frozen. Not only were my friends going to struggle to get the money, if the place was sold to someone else and they were asked for a higher rent or were evicted, it would be nearly impossible to find an affordable place with more than 2 bedrooms. I was scared for my friends, but I was also incandescently angry. These greedy jerks were some of the wealthiest people in the city. They were doing over a struggling family for less than $20,000 each. They didn't need that money. It's pure greed, and it was obvious that they had always planned to do this. So while my friends scrambled to come up with the money, I started plotting. I looked up advice on what helps to make a sale. We needed to make the place as undesirable as possible without making my friends look like bad tenants. Uncluttered, we moved all the furniture in from the walls, added some extra furniture, and borrowed ornaments, and hung a load of motorcycle memorabilia on the walls. The place felt smaller. Smell. My friend boiled a head of cabbage on the stove, and we sprayed ammonia around the front and back doors, because it smells like all of the neighborhood cats had been marking their territory. We also poured 2 dozen rotten eggs down the drain to make it smell like sewer gas. Neighborhood. We obtained a moldy old couch and dumped it in the front yard of the neighbors across the road, with permission of course. We started calling friends for help. Anybody with a loud and crappy car was asked to do a few laps in front of the block during the open day. The street was unusually busy that day. Everyone we knew found a reason to drive by. It was practically rush hour. We called out mates from the rugby club, full contact football without any of that soft padding. A big portion of our club are very large men. The next door neighbor set up a barbecue in their front yard, and we offered free food and cheap beer. They came on motorcycles wearing their roughest gear. There was quite a crowd. A lot of people showed up for the open day. Quite a few were in and out within minutes. One lady sat in her car and watched the party next door before driving away. The one bloke who stayed any length of time was brave enough to start up a conversation with someone leaving the party. He asked if they were often there and was told every couple of weeks or so. They have an after-party morning, and the party the night before was 3 doors up. The partygoers also helpfully mentioned the troublesome drains that are always getting blocked by tree roots and stinking up the place. The potential buyer left without making an offer. So my friends were the only ones to make an offer. They still had to pay more than they had planned, but not as much as the greedy jerks wanted. My friends signed the paper and paid the deposit that day. So when the brave buyer put in an offer of $30,000 more than my friends, There was nothing the owners could do about it. Strict anti-gazumping laws. I would have loved to see the owners' faces when they found out. Would I be the jerk for not helping my sister with a good reference for a job she's more than qualified for? My sister Claudia and I are not close. Very low contact, always family related. When we were in high school, she stole my boyfriend from me. After that kind of betrayal, I've never trusted her fully, and I've kept my partners distant from her. I'd like to be clear that this is not just this event alone, but this was the major event that made me pull away from her. The awful behavior has continued throughout Claudia's life. She's stolen the boyfriends of several, 3 that I know of her now ex-friends, and always seems to get bored as soon as the guy leaves his partner for her. Claudia is not a nice person, but she is superficially charming and makes a good first impression. Twice now at work, Claudia has hooked up with her married supervisors and caused so much drama that ended up in the guys resigning. I have no idea what happened to their home situations, but it couldn't have been good. Claudia thrives on drama and absolutely loves it. I've suggested counseling but was shot down. Claudia likes the chase more than anything else, and she says that there's nothing wrong with that. She justifies her behavior with, anyone that didn't want to cheat wouldn't cheat. You can see why we don't talk much. My friend Brennan, who I met through a previous job, is now in the same industry as Claudia, and Claudia recently found that Brennan's company is hiring. Brennan is sorta HR for the small company Claudia is interested in, and Claudia has applied. Brennan sent an email. I should note it was from his personal address, not his company account, asking if I could vouch for Claudia, and I'm stuck now. Claudia can absolutely do this job. She'll do great at it, except for the fact that she will probably ruin somebody's marriage in the process. The fact that she's done this at 2 out of the 3 places she's worked long-term since college is uncomfortable, and there are 6 times I personally know of that she's done this. Claudia is currently single. I don't know what to do, but I'm leaning towards not replying to the email and calling Brennan to give him my honest opinion that she would be an excellent technical fit, but a disaster socially. That way it's not in writing and Brennan can still be told. But I'm directly sabotaging my sister's prospects if I do that. But again, I'm directly sabotaging Brennan if I don't tell him what Claudia is liable to do. Claudia will pass any screen they give her. She's charming and has no record of any kind. Would I be the jerk if I told Brennan my sister would be a great technical fit, but would be a social disaster? Update. I called Brennan. It had been nearly a day since his email when I posted. Turns out, the reason he reached out to me is because Claudia passed her screening and reference check with the company, but Brennan had final say because he was going to be working with her directly on some policy stuff, so he wanted to know who they would be hiring. Brennan had been hearing rumors as well about Claudia and wanted to reach out to me to ask if I'd be honest with him and tell him if they were true, and if working with Claudia was going to be a nightmare for him. This is where my tightrope walk began. I said that I couldn't discuss any rumors related to my sister with a potential new workplace as that would be inappropriate. I said that I refused to give a reference on her as I've never worked with her and she's family. I said I hoped he understood. Brennan thanked me and said he wouldn't be hiring her after my refusal. I panicked a bit, realizing I may have just cost her this job. He said it wasn't my refusal personally, but the rumors flying around were too much of a risk when he has a candidate with 90% of Claudia's abilities and experience and none of the potential drama. Brennan said that if I'd been willing to vouch for Claudia, it might have been different, but everyone declined or refused, and that was a pattern for him. Brennan then freaked out, thinking he might have said too much, so it was awkwardly silent for a bit. The end of the call was super cringy and embarrassing. I imagine it will be a while before we speak again. So it appears that my sister's drama has cost her a job offer, but I now feel incredibly guilty because I could have been the one to stand up for her and make her get the job, but I didn't. I haven't heard from my sister about it and doubt I will. Brennan was not the one to interview her or reject her. He met her once on a group call, so I don't think she will even consider him or me as the reason for this. Thanks everyone for your help in dealing with this neatly. My husband, who's 53, wants me, 44 female, to pay for upgrades on a house that I have no financial claim to. My husband and I have been married for 3 years, together for 5. When we got married, I sold my house. Just broke even after realtor fees because I'd only owned it for 3 years, and I moved into his house that he owns, free and clear. We did sign a prenup before getting married, very simple, and just agreeing that real estate assets, financial assets, and debts before marriage stay that way in the event of divorce. I suppose we didn't have a thorough enough discussion about household contribution expectations though. I was of the understanding that I'd move in and we'd just split the household expenses and carry on. Wrong. He expected that I would move in and start paying all the bills because I'm saving money not having a mortgage. I'm not sure what that has to do with anything because he doesn't have a mortgage either, which I bring up every time we have this discussion. Doesn't compute with me at all because I still had to close on my house and pay some final bills there after I moved in with him. I didn't start paying anything at his house until my house matters were all final, so his unilateral financial decision about bills didn't come to a head until several months afterward. Anyway, I complied to avoid any argument and I transferred the bills into my name and started paying them. That's all been fine for the last few years. I work full-time in a professional position. I pay the utilities, trash, internet, combined car insurance, cable TV, combined cell phones, about half of the groceries, the property taxes, they're low. All of that is still less than my mortgage and bills were, so I do come out ahead if you compare past to present. We kind of split entertainment and going out to eat, but I do believe I pay more than he usually does. I also cook, clean, and do some outdoor chores like gardening, weeding, cleaning the pool, and I've mowed the lawn, once. My husband is retired and gets a little retirement income of about $2,000 each month. He spends it around the property on upgrades and repairs, on groceries, gas, some of our entertainment, and lots of stupid, in my opinion, stuff for himself, entertainment and shopping. He does some cleaning, cooking, and the majority of the outdoor chores. We have kids from previous marriages, but they're grown and gone. We still have separate bank accounts and finances. The bills are all in my name though, besides the property taxes, so I just pay them each month like I did when I was by myself. So here's the problem. It has come up a couple of times recently that he wants me to pay for half of the house upgrades and repairs, like rotten siding, HVAC cleaning, new toilet, minor roof repair, paint, materials to repair water leaks. Basically, anything you'd buy at the hardware store, he thinks I should pay for half of. He does the repairs himself, so there's no labor costs. I told him I really don't think it's any of my responsibility to pay for upgrades to a house that I have no financial interest in or claim to. To me, paying all of the bills frees up his income to then pay for any upgrades he wants to. If this relationship goes sideways, I just have to walk away with nothing except the household goods I came with and maybe some furniture and appliances I bought over the last 3 years. He says everyone has to pay the same bills in life, and he doesn't understand why I always bring that up when he asks me to pay for other stuff with the house. In his mind, those bills don't count because everyone has them. He even called me a gold digger, and he wasn't looking in the mirror when he said it. He's genuinely upset that I don't want to contribute to house repairs. I feel like I already contribute way more than my fair share. I believe we should be splitting all of the bills, and he should still pay for house upgrades until I've earned a spot in the will. He says things are going to change, or I can just leave. I really do fail to see things from his perspective. How should I respond when he brings this up again? This whole thing is so bizarre and feels like the Twilight Zone. No. Put a new deal on the table. You split household expenses 50-50 and he covers all housing costs, or you go on the deed, in which case you will consider contributing to repairs. It sounds like he wants to protect his house to leave to his kids, but he can't afford it. If that's the case, in a way, you're spending your kid's inheritance on his. I know houses have gone up a lot in price, but if you can afford to buy, maybe you should. The day may come when you lose him in your home, if not through divorce, then when his kids inherit it. Or just get an apartment, enjoy your independence, and be free of feeling used. Am I the jerk for canceling my wedding after finding out my fiance's ex was invited by his family? I, 27 female, and my fiance, Alex, 30 male, have been engaged for a year and we were planning our wedding for the end of the summer. Everything was going smoothly until a couple of weeks ago when Alex's family dropped a bombshell. Alex's family is very close-knit and has always been involved in our wedding planning. Recently, I found out that they've invited Alex's ex, Sarah, to our wedding. Alex and Sarah were dating for about 5 years and broke up 2 years ago. They're still on good terms, but I was never comfortable with the idea of her being at our wedding. When I brought this up to Alex, he said it's a family tradition to invite former partners if they're still friends, and that it would be rude to exclude her. He insisted that it's no big deal and that Sarah is just part of their extended social circle. I tried to explain that having Sarah at our wedding made me feel uncomfortable and undermined the significance of the event for me. Alex's response was that I was being unreasonable and selfish for not considering his family's feelings. He argued that it would cause unnecessary drama if we uninvited Sarah now and that we should just focus on enjoying the day. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about inviting an ex, but also about my place in Alex's life and whether I was truly a priority. After a lot of back and forth, I decided that I couldn't go through with the wedding under these circumstances. I canceled the venue and all of the plans we had made, explaining to Alex and his family that I couldn't commit to marrying someone who wasn't willing to respect my feelings about such a significant issue. Now Alex and his family are furious with me. They believe that I'm overreacting and that I should have been more accommodating. Some of my friends and family think I did the right thing, while others feel I may have acted too impulsively. So, am I the jerk for canceling my wedding after finding out what they were doing? Not the jerk. This wasn't just about an ex being invited, it was about how your feelings and boundaries were respected. A wedding is a union of two people, not an obligation to adhere to family tradition that makes the bride uncomfortable. If this issue couldn't be resolved amicably, it's better to rethink the relationship altogether. Everyone sucks here. His family sucks for inviting anyone without asking you first, regardless if it's an ex. He sucks for not warning you about this family tradition. Has he ever communicated that he's on friendly terms with her? You kind of suck for going to such an extreme already. Who cares if she's there? Truthfully, you're the one who's marrying. Let her see how beautiful you are and how happy the two of you are. I got married in May, second marriage for both of us. His ex-wife was invited. It was actually my idea. She's the mother of his kids, and she's been friends with the family since they were in high school. If your relationship makes it through this, you need to lay down the law with his family about boundaries. Otherwise, they will continue to overstep. Am I the jerk for having second thoughts about marrying my fiancé after I learned about what she did 10 years ago? My fiancé and I got engaged last month, and we've been in a relationship for 4 years. I was very excited about marrying her and having her as a life partner until I learned something recently which is making me have second thoughts. To provide more context, my fiancé always seemed a bit nervous around my sister. I asked my fiancé about it, and she just said they were old high school friends. When I asked my sister, she too said the same thing, but she was always a bit cold to my fiancé. This carried on the entire time we were dating, and my sister was always somewhat cold to her. When I told her I proposed and we were engaged, she congratulated me, but she didn't seem too excited or thrilled for me, which surprised me because we are always each other's biggest supporters and well-wishers. But I didn't make too much of it, and I was really excited that I was engaged and was going to marry the love of my life. However, last week, my sister called me for a serious chat. She said she always wanted to get this off her chest, but that she didn't want to interfere in my relationship, but that she felt I had a right to know before marrying my fiancé. She told me she was distant friends with my fiancé in high school, but that friendship was broken after her boyfriend had cheated on her with my fiancé. She said my fiancé knew about their relationship, but she still chose to hook up with her boyfriend. I was a bit shocked because I remember consoling my sister for a few months after her boyfriend cheated on her. I just didn't know that the person he had cheated on her with was my fiancé. The next day I asked my fiancé about it and she fully admitted to it, but she was also in tears. She said that was a horrible mistake she made in high school and she felt guilty about it and that she is a completely changed woman and that experience taught her so much. While I do believe my fiancé that she is a changed woman and that she is not the type to cheat, I'm just having second thoughts about everything. I still remember the hurt that my sister felt in high school, and to now know that my fiancé was responsible for it, it makes me look at her in a different light. Am I the jerk for having second thoughts about marrying my fiancé? Not the jerk. We all do stupid things in high school that we're not proud of. People change over 10 years. I would ask her why she didn't bring this up. Good luck. What does distant friends in high school mean? That they saw each other in passing while walking the aisle? Took a few classes together? They weren't close, and that was 10 years ago. This is not something to be held over her head. If your sister was so bothered, she should have said something before you proposed. I don't blame the fiancé. It's not like people go around divulging every mistake they made as teenagers. I would hope that you aren't the same person you were in high school 10 years later. This goes for you and your fiancé. People grow. High schoolers are just kids. I really hope you never made a dumb mistake in high school, but I guess your sister got the best revenge possibly by waiting years, letting your relationship grow, plan a wedding, then bam, it's over. Bet your sister's thrilled she gets her payback. I say this because she could have just told you at the start, so could your girlfriend. But yeah, if you're going to dump her over stupid high school crap, you're probably not ready for marriage anyway. Exactly. If he's letting stupid high school crap get in his head about if he wants to marry this woman, you simply don't need to get married. It's not a big deal. Being overly dramatic. Stop judging others for what they did as teenagers. I'm sure you did dumb things too. Get off your high horse. Am I the jerk for insisting on going on the family vacation of my ex-boyfriend? I, 34 female, was with my ex-boyfriend, male 25, for a year and a half. Our breakup was amicable. I never assumed it would last given the age difference. I got along well with his family, even with his mother who, understandably, wasn't a fan of our relationship given our age gap, but she did like me as a person. Before our breakup, we were invited to a destination wedding for his cousin in Hawaii. I was asked to make arrangements for flights and hotel. I didn't mind, so we made the arrangements together, selecting the place and flight times, and I put it all on my credit card with the promise that they would pay back their portions when they could, over $2,000 each. I have a good job and I could pay for the whole trip, and I was happy to do it to save them interest on a credit card. Since then, we broke up. Recently, I got an email from his mother asking for her flight and hotel information. I politely reminded her that they would need to pay back their portion. It's been 3 months since we booked the trip, and asked if they would reimburse me for my portion of the hotel and Airbnb since we broke up and I wouldn't even be attending. At first, her response was cool, but polite, saying that I would get my money back eventually. I didn't respond. She wrote back again with a much different tone, demanding the information for the hotel and Airbnb, and she said I was causing undue stress while they were planning for the big trip. I reminded her that I would happily share the information once I was reimbursed. She said that I would not be reimbursed for my portion of the accommodation expenses and that she was going to tell everyone how horrible I was for holding the hotel information hostage. I texted my ex and asked what was happening and why things had taken such a turn. He said I was being unreasonable and making everything about money, which was unfair since I knew they were struggling financially and I wasn't. I said that it didn't feel very fair to me that I was basically paying for them to go on this trip and getting nothing in return. He assured me that they would work on paying me back when things got better for them financially. I said that just wouldn't work for me since I had no guarantee and no idea how long that would be, and that I would still be out thousands of dollars since they didn't want to reimburse me for my portion. I offered instead to let them share one room at the Airbnb and one room at the hotel, but that I would be staying in one room as well. He was outraged and said I was making things weird, but my side is that if I have the time off of work already and it's paid for, why shouldn't I just go? I told him that I'm still within the range to cancel the reservations if that was a better fit, which he also didn't like since prices are much higher now and places are harder to find. I won't attend the wedding, of course, but I don't see why I can't take the vacation that I planned and paid for. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's been several months and you haven't been reimbursed for even a portion of the trip. In my opinion, since you've paid for everything, it's your vacation to enjoy. If you can afford it, why not just cancel the extra airline tickets, keep the Airbnb, and have a lovely time in Hawaii on your own? Not the jerk. But if you can cancel and get refunds on everything, then tell them they need to pay you this amount by this day or you're going to cancel everything and it will be up to them to fund their own arrangements. My boyfriend is upset I want to split expenses in half versus a percentage based on income. My boyfriend and I, male 30, female 28, have been together for just over a year. While I'm neutral on the necessity of living together before an engagement or marriage, he believes it's an important next step, so we've started apartment hunting. My lease is up in October, and the owners are moving back in, so the timing works out perfectly. Mark currently lives in a studio-style place and spends about $1,800 a month on rent. I'm in a 2-bedroom plus tiny office. I'm spending $4,000 a month. Mark has a decent job, and he has no problems covering bills with a little left over, but it would be a stretch for him to go up in rent too much more than what he's currently paying. I make, for context, roughly 5 times the amount Mark does. Yes, I could pay more in rent than what I do now, but I'm more interested in saving and eventually leaving this area, opening my own practice, buying a home, etc. Also, for context and background, right now Mark and I split going out and our activities pretty 50-50. We take turns going out and planning dates, no real conflicts. I probably choose more expensive places and activities when I'm planning and paying, but it's not been a problem that I've been aware of. Anyway, Mark scheduled a number of apartment showings for us. He was super excited about all of this, so I let him take the lead. I assumed we'd be looking at places similar in size and cost to where I'm living right now because he'd want to keep his costs similar or less than what he's spending currently. Oh no, not the case at all. The whole first day was a series of luxury places sprawling all over some of the nicest neighborhoods in the city. Average rent on these places we saw was between $6,500 and $7,500 a month. I didn't say anything while we were looking, but when we got back to my place that night, I asked Mark what the heck was going through his mind with those prices. He said he picked his favorite places and neighborhoods first and figured I wouldn't mind upping my costs a little. But he had some options in the $5,500 to $6,000 range too that wouldn't even be a noticeable increase in rent for me. I was super confused at this point and asked him to clarify how he expected us to be splitting rent because the math just wasn't working out for me. He looked at me like I'd asked the dumbest question in the world and said because he makes 20% of what I make, He'd be contributing 20% of the cost, of course. I told him I completely understood that some couples do percentage-based expenses, but if we're going to be sharing a place half and half, then we should be paying for it half and half. We're not married, we're not even engaged. I'm not going to be gifting rent to him. He got upset because if we choose a place that he could still afford going half and half on, my rent would be going down and his would be staying the same. I agreed, but pointed out that he'd be in a bigger place in a nicer neighborhood, so he'd still be benefiting as well. Or we can choose someplace less expensive for both of us. I also asked if he expected us to split things like utilities and other household costs with this same formula, and he said of course. I told him if he wasn't comfortable with splitting expenses evenly, we didn't have to make the decision to move in together until much further on in our relationship, and I could just get another place on my own. Now, everything I suggest or say is met with coldness and sarcasm, like I told him I'm canceling his birthday or something. I get that he's looking at this from the perspective of what I can do, but just because I can doesn't mean I'm comfortable doing it. I'd understand if I had personally wanted to upgrade into something that he couldn't afford, but it's just not that important to me. Am I remarkably out of touch and unfair here? I'd rather not fight about this if there's a perspective I'm missing out on, but it just doesn't feel right to me. How do I rectify this? I think that the issue here isn't the split, it's him actively seeking out apartments he can't afford because he expects you to pay for it. Should it be 50-50? Maybe not, but the total budget and how it's split should be decided together, not him choosing a place and then expecting you to pay more than you currently do while he still continues to pay what he always has. It's the disrespect of his assumption that you would subsidize whatever housing arrangement he wanted. I don't think that the arrangement of splitting bills is wrong, especially with you making 5 times what he does. What I think is wrong is that he decided this on his own and then picked out luxury apartments because he thought you would just pay for them. This is an important discussion to have, and I think this situation is bringing that to light. It's time to have a conversation and decide the percentage and what you are looking for in terms of rent. Are you remarkably out of touch and unfair? Yeah, you are out of touch and unfair. If you don't want to move in with him, just say so. But if you do, then go in with good intentions, which involves an equitable split of things. Now, you are well within your right to ask for a place that costs less, but you should still split the cost of that place equitably. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.